Activity 38 is about a new meaning of liberty, the seventh that we've been studying, which is not being ruled by foreigners or people outside of our political community, also known as independence. So if you look at letter A of Activity 38, I've taken a couple of passages from Herodotus, which uses the word liberty or freedom in an unusual way. It says, the Persians always considered it to be a terrible thing to be ruled by the Medes, who were a different people, different nation. So now that they had found a leader, they were glad to become free. So you can see that the Medes had conquered the Persians, and Persians were under the rule of a foreign people, the Medes, and it was a terrible thing, but when they found a leader, they were able to gain their independence from the Medes. The second bullet uses the word free in a similar way. It says, Hystaspes replied, O king, you have caused the Persians to be free instead of slaves, and to rule all others rather than to be ruled by others. So here, the word liberty or free means not being ruled by foreigners. The Persians, when they become free, they're no longer ruled by the Medes. Now I want to focus on why it's such a terrible thing to be ruled by foreigners. As it says here, it was a terrible thing for the Persians to be ruled by the Medes. And this is often the case, that it's a terrible thing to be ruled by foreigners. Now when I ask my students in class, often, why is it so terrible? They come up with things like, well, it's different language, different culture. The rulers don't understand the needs of the people they're ruling. There's something to all these responses, but it misses the essential point, which is that if you conquer another country and are ruling that other country, you don't really care that very much. You don't really care very much about that country. You're wanting to exploit that country for your own gain. So the point here is that, especially focusing on these rights of life, liberty, and property, that when you're being ruled by foreigners, it increases the likelihood that that government is going to harm you in your life, liberty, or property. So if we're thinking of what are some things that keep us safe from governments, we've seen self-government as one, we've seen constitutionally limited government as another, and we can add independence as yet another barrier against being harmed by government. When you're independent, then you're much less likely to be harmed by the government that's ruling you. Letter B is taken from the Declaration of Independence, very famous words. I encourage you this July 4th to sit down with your friends and family and loved ones and read through the Declaration of Independence. I do that with my family every year. And then they're a little bored, but it's still something worth doing. You can see that, of course, the 4th of July is when we celebrate independence, and the Declaration of Independence is about independence, this meaning of liberty. So when we read it, we see when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So notice, first of all, the Declaration is not addressed to the King of England. It's addressed to the world, to explain to the world why we are seeking our independence from Great Britain. So that's the meaning of liberty that's being discussed here, is independence, not being ruled by foreigners. The Americans no longer wanted to be ruled by the British. Why? Because if you read that document, the government of Great Britain was violating the life, liberty, and property of the Americans, and also was taking away, as we saw in an earlier activity, the right of self-government by which we protect ourselves from the government, and in that case the government of Great Britain. Notice something important here. It says that the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle the Americans a separate and equal station, which means that God gives people the right to independence. Why? Well, you can see at the end of letter B, it says that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The reason why, according to, this is the understanding of the founders, the authors and signers of the Declaration of Independence, the reason why God gives us the right of independence is because He gives us the right of life, liberty, and property, these rights. And if God gives us these rights of life, liberty, and property, then He also gives us whatever additional rights are necessary to safeguard these rights, independence being one of them, the right of self-government being another. So God gives us the right of self-government and independence because we need those to protect life, liberty, and property. There is a distinction, by the way, between self-government and independence. A country like Iraq, for example, under Saddam Hussein, they were independent. They were being ruled by an Iraqi, but they did not enjoy self-government. There were not laws made by the representatives of the people in the legislature, so you can have one without the other, and they're two different things. Letter C is a technical definition. You can use this in your paper when you write your final essay. George Tucker defines as political slavery when a nation, by an external cause, is deprived of the right of being governed by your own laws. So in a conquered country, in a colony, they're not independent, so they're politically slaves. He goes on to say at the end that the personal rights of the subject might be secured. In other words, it's conceivable that that mother country or the conquering country may provide protection of life, liberty, and property. So if that's the case, then the people are enjoying individual rights, the protection of their individual rights, so liberty in that sense of living under a government that protects person and property, but they're not living under a government that's they are being ruled by foreigners or people outside their political community. So you can enjoy liberty in the sense of living under a government that protects person and property, but not enjoy liberty in the sense